Welcome to Season 3 of the Strange, Rare, and Peculiar podcast, a place where we explore the past, present, and future of homeopathy from the perspective of a couple of insiders who have been around the homeo block a couple of times.
Homeo block? Oh, good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
And hello.
I get a bad feeling about this podcast.
Why?
It's all
Don't
over
say
the place.
that.
I don't feel right. It's
Wait, for real?
the whole ritual is catawampus.
See, I actually think, well, it's going to be different. Because we're having coffee, not tea.
I don't know what I'm
It's a
going to do.
first thing in the morning pot. Well, it's not
I'm
technically
going to start
first
talking
thing in the
over the
morning.
top of you, and it's only 3 minutes or it's only 1 minute into the thing.
Okay. So people, good day.
G'day.
G'day, mates. We're having coffee. You hear that sound?
Oh, that's a slurp of
That's
coffee.
a slurp.
It's a morning coffee. Yeah, I've been so used to the tea ritual that
Yeah.
I have to say, yeah.
But today we're on a different schedule, or
So I
even
need
a
some-
schedule.
Should I just take some colour carbonicum and call you in the morning?
Get on with your routine.
Mm.
Yeah.
Sure.
You had a cramp. You had a calf cramp in the night.
Oh, folks, you're in the best dream of your life. I was a backup singer in my dream. So it's actually, I wasn't at the front, which is really interesting. But I was in the back of an open air performance
Like a stadium.
space. Yeah. And talking with my backup singers, come on, boys, we're gonna really do it today. And I was like this sort of pep talk. And right at that moment, killing pain in my calf muscles.
You woke up screaming.
Oh my! Yes.
You okay?
Yeah, still feel it in the right.
Yeah. You haven't had that in a while. Anyway,
I couldn't
it's
get back to my dream. I just was desperate to
Was
get
it
back
like
there.
50 feet from stardom? I love that.
It was kind of that. That, and it was also.
I love
I'm going to
this
say it's
dream.
early 60s music. Well, no, sorry, it wasn't early 60s. It was that period of sort of late 60s rock and roll.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So, like, did you have hair? Oh, my goodness. This is good. This is
So,
good.
yeah,
So
there's
we're
my
having
drink.
coffee, which I know that there are homeopaths who are probably sitting out there saying, coffee?
Outrageous.
Outrageous. What are you doing drinking coffee?
I'm a homeopath.
To which we respond, loving it. It is mostly decaf, though, I have to admit.
That whole story about Hahnemann and his attitude to coffee, as it emerged for me, I didn't understand the story so much when I was when I first found homeopathy or first started studying it.
You.
What I heard, what I was told, a bit naive, I suppose, is don't drink coffee, and I didn't ask why, and I didn't sort of seek any, or really have any resources to go digging deeper into it.
You didn't know about the footnote to 261?
Well, no, that's not the point. The point is that Hahnemann, he obviously felt that it was a medicinal substance, and it was first on his list in the aphorism, in the footnote at 261.
Followed by tea.
Well, followed by toothpaste and flowers. But what I never realised until Vermeulen pointed it out was that the Dutch had the rights to import coffee into Europe. And therefore, the second part of it was that it was un-Germanic to drink coffee when beer was much more of a Germanic brew. Because you say German, but Germany didn't exist.
Saxony.
While where Hahnemann was living was Saxony, yeah.
Or was it...
Yeah, no, it was
wait.
Saxony. It wasn't Prussia.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And so there's this interesting take on, or political take on it, that it was patriotic to drink beer for breakfast. I've always admired that in Hahnemann.
A true patriot.
Good on you, mate.
But, however, in chronic diseases, he does double down about the coffee.
Yeah, he says it's pernicious influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, he also says that's in the treatment of chronic disease.
Yeah.
And so, are you taking a remedy at the moment?
I am not.
Me neither. And so, I think when I read aphorism 261, and all of the other times that he's talking about regimen and lifestyle and all of that stuff in the organon, he is essentially saying, tell your sick people, tell your patients, tell your clients, if you are a sick person getting treatment, then remove everything which might have a medicinal effect, which might confuse the physician as to the action of the remedy, right?
Yeah, totally.
There you go.
So we're cool.
All right, well, I'm cool.
Do you tell your clients no coffee?
I've never said that. Well, I've had one client once. It'd be interesting to know how many clients I've seen over the years. I think those really busy physicians, seeing hundreds of thousands of clients over their career. For me, I kind of average it out about 1,000 consultations a year-ish.
Yeah.
And so, if that's the case, then I think, maybe say 36,000 consultations.
Wait, but we did the numbers. Hold on, because we did the numbers. Because I had the wrong number on my slide. You said that's not how many clients you've seen. You've seen more than that. I really lowballed it, but it wasn't we have to work out that math. Anyway, but with that math.
I've seen one client once who categorically, absolutely, from my empirical observation, was taking a remedy, had a coffee, the first one in ages, and that remedy stopped working from that moment.
Yeah.
Once. And it was I remember the date, it was 1997.
Really?
Yeah.
How do you remember? Because of your hair?
Because I remember the client.
Oh.
Because of my hair. It would have been the face that I was wearing these kind of amazing waistcoats.
Oh my gosh.
Waistcoat.
I could see you in a waistcoat.
Ah.
Wait, was it the blousoon shirts as well?
So a French peasant, white, voluminous.
I have one of your shirts from that era. The purple one. Did you have it made in Sri Lanka or something?
I had that one made in Sri Lanka.
Yeah, it's really something.
But no, the originals were from the 80s. Oh, I wore that for a number of years.
Quite some time. Was that with the diaper pants or totally different era?
No, totally the same.
I can't. Can we get back to the homeopathy?
No, hang on, because I want to tell you the story.
Okay.
Because I've, when you're every now and again you find a groove, like a fashion groove, and mine was, I found a white cotton peasant shirt. It was, had a buttons down to there.
Do you know the Seinfeld about the shirt? You're gonna have to.
No, I don't. And it was just a little bit puffy, and it was
a little,
there. And it was good because I had my long hair and I had my whiskers. And
you're feeling good, weren't you?
Well, I just didn't need to worry about it because I knew it kind of looked okay. Now, when I'm saying okay, you got to put that in context,
right? Because
I was living in the south of New Zealand, where high fashion was
yet to come.
Your good pair of Adidas tracksuit pants.
I really like the way people in New Zealand dress.
Yeah, I'm talking about the 80s.
True, I don't really have that reference point. But I'm from New Jersey, so we...
I can tell you one of the images that I will never, ever forget. I worked in a pub in putting myself through university.
Yeah.
And on a Thursday night was when the government paid out for the... We used to call it the dole. You got your money.
Yeah.
And so everyone went to the pub, and the pub where I was working. And that was the night that the ladies would put on their Adidas tracksuit pants and their high heels. And that was a look.
Wow.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is that an obstacle to cure?
It's a long way from how we started the conversation.
Wow, it sure is.
Yeah. So then I had that shirt, when the shirt finally disintegrated, I made it, I gave it to a pattern maker. I looked in the yellow pages or something. The yellow pages.
Yeah. Wow.
And young folks, there were these things called the yellow pages.
There was this phone book.
I know. And so then that coincided with a trip to Thailand, the buying of a whole lot of silk and the making of some very, very colourful, voluminous shirts.
Yeah.
Shirts. The bottom part was at a market. I found a pair of pants.
I call them diaper pants. I don't know how else you would describe them because they had Velcro on the front.
Well, the waist would have been about 60 inches.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, you got into them.
Yeah.
And then because there was Velcro around the front, it was very cool. You then to get them on.
Dear God.
It was amazing. I wore those for years.
They're the... Yeah.
And I didn't think that the people pointing and laughing at me in the street, had any meaning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm glad you can really come clean with this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was taught how to dress in my 34th year.
Yeah.
A guy I met, a herbalist called Michael, he took me in hand. He told me about bootcut jeans. I had no idea.
Okay, we need to get back to the homeopathy.
All
You're
right.
really going. Have you finished? If you get a little more coffee in you, I think you can focus. It's early.
This is
why
decaf, right?
it's mostly decaf. I put a little bit in there. I spike it a little for you.
I tell people that I haven't had a caffeinated coffee since the 16th of December 2019.
But you don't get a true caffeinated coffee because if we go back now to where we started, which is about obstacles and lifestyle and regimen, which is a really big deal to Hahnemann, as big a deal as giving the remedy, you were drinking way too much coffee.
Yeah.
You were, okay, actually, this is going to be one of those ridiculous podcasts, but so we used to teach in New York City. The school was in Brooklyn for a bit, a couple of years, maybe 3-4 years. And Al he would drink a lot of shots of espresso. So he would go out for an espresso with some frequency, probably more frequency than his responsibilities in the classroom were in alignment with.
Those of you living in Sydney or Melbourne might be somewhat bemused because trying to find a shot of coffee in New York is not always easy. It is now because the Australians have taken over.
But that's not true.
Oh, I found it pretty hard to find a macchiato, like an Italian or a ristretto. It was impossible.
I think you were looking in limited places. You were just looking in the proximity of where you were.
The wrong places.
Yeah. So anyway, but you were drinking so much coffee to the point where you bought a coffee device so that you could make coffee in the classroom. And it involved a camping stove. So this was in a building where... Did the windows open? The windows must have opened in there.
I think they opened like a sliver.
Yeah, because it would have been loud because it was close to the subway.
That's exactly it.
But...
It was in Dumbo. It was amazing.
Yeah, Dumbo, which is down under the Manhattan and Brooklyn bridges. Anyway, or bridge overpass, Manhattan Bridge overpass. But Al was... making this coffee on propane. He had a propane stove, which you really can't and shouldn't ignite in an enclosed space.
Really?
Do you remember what happened?
Yeah, I apologize to the fireman.
Yeah. So, and then your coffee drinking, it wasn't really good. It wasn't really good for your attitude. But you've really...
Well, I think that's the least of it, because I would have said that, I'm suddenly feeling somewhat ashamed of my proclivities, because I would have been in the habit of having two coffees, that's 4 shots.
Yeah.
In the morning, and then probably another one mid-morning, especially in the days that I was working, say in Sydney or in Brisbane. And I think about that from the financial point of view, but also, I don't know, in your 30s or 40s, I don't know, just...
So this is not a therapy session for you. I'm really trying to get to a point here.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to get to a point as well.
Yeah, but the point I'm trying to make is around...
But then I also had the machine. I also had an espresso. I bought an espresso in which I put in my office.
Yeah, yeah. And so...
So these are little shots. These aren't giant buckets of coffee.
Right, I like a bucket
intense.
Of coffee.
Oh, you're a bucket girl.
Yeah. The thing... lest we digress. The point I want to make is that...
All right.
There are a couple of points. One is that... regimen is such a big part of the organon and in chronic diseases. And Hahnemann talks so much about how important it is that we take care of these machines we live in. And I think sometimes the lifestyle can be a ruse. You know, you can think that a person has, I don't know, some GI complaint or some whatever complaint, when in reality it's something that they're putting in their body that perhaps doesn't agree with them. But then that brings up a secondary thing, right? Which is, well, is this an aggravated from milk case, right? And I think that
I didn't understand.
So I think about this a lot from the standpoint of, you know, when you're teaching clinics, you really do just hear the things that students grapple with over and over and over again, right? And, you know, we do this a gazillion times a year. It's like, as you progress through, every group of students brings a similar line of questions, which then helps you to understand what are some of the challenges that are perceived in homeopathy. So one of them, I think, I'm particularly interested in things around lifestyle and regimen because, well, I think we all know when we are taking care of our bodies, we're at our best. We feel at our best. And it doesn't necessarily get rid of our symptoms, but it helps with that push toward the whatever you are presenting miasm is, for it to calm down. So that, you know, this idea of an active miasmatic presentation or a dormant miasmatic presentation is it's a murky water in case analysis.
Well, we probably don't. I now know where you're going, except I have no idea why you mentioned milk. Why did you talk about milk?
Because, well...
You mean milk in the coffee?
No, just dairy. Like, for example, if someone comes to you and they say, yeah, I can't drink milk. Every time I drink milk, I get cramps in my belly or something. And, you know.
My first thought is, has anyone ever told you you're not a cow?
Yeah, I mean, there is that. And so is that, you know, when students, you know, in the early stages of studying homeopathy, it's all about finding a rubric. Is the milk aggravates rubric appropriate?
I find that rubric really problematic.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
But how we explain that to students is what becomes really interesting. Yeah. Gluten is the same thing. Right. You know, like in my situation, am I aggravated from gluten? 100%. I cannot tolerate it anymore. Mm-hmm. Do I have an allergy to wheat? Depends on what the definition of allergy is in that time.
It depends on what country you're in as well.
Exactly. And as you translate it to homeopathy, what does it really relate to? In my case, it went from being something that I could manage to being something that I couldn't after I had to have IV antibiotics after a spider bite.
I spent a lot of time on airplanes, and on one journey, and it was probably, this is, I don't know, 20 years ago, and on one journey, I was reading the aphorisms. I was going to teach on miasmatic theory.
Yeah.
And I was
Not
reading...
a theory, a paradigm. Oh, sorry, I just hit your computer with the coffee.
Careful.
I know, sorry. I just banged his computer with the coffee pot.
I know. And I started to doodle on an airsick bag. And
that's not the first time. You have a lot of airsick bag doodles.
I do.
You did my whole family tree on an airsick bag
I
once.
did.
Anyway,
back to me.
Of course.
So, what I realised was that essentially Hahnemann gave us, if you read those paragraphs, you read the paragraphs, but if you draw it, as I did, or that part of the organon, what he's saying is...
classification of diseases?
Yeah, there's a natural classification of diseases. And I then realised that if you take... And I think it's just maybe I've got, in this regard, got a visual mind, but if you take what he was saying around pseudo-chronic disease symptoms and artificial chronic disease symptoms, and attempt to either remove them or through advice around medication or advice around regimen and lifestyle, that then does exactly what you're saying. And so, although I respect there's a bit of complexity with what you just said about gluten and some of those reactions and sensitivities that people have.
Because that's developed Sora.
Right, exactly. But in that instance, so what he's saying is that if there are chronic disease symptoms that are able to be removed by tweaks of lifestyle, then tweak the lifestyle.
Right.
And that will leave you a clearer symptom picture.
Yep.
Now, if I was taking your case, I'd be including the developed Sora that you're just talking about. Right? Because if you've removed gluten, and that's still part of your chronic disease picture. That's not always the same. With, say, coffee with me, in the situation that we were talking about. You just got
nicer, and you didn't get as many nosebleeds.
Well, and my blood pressure was astronomical, and I was, I was working 7 jobs. So, there's always reasons for things.
Yeah.
The reason is the chronic disease symptom.
Exactly.
The coffee as a way to keep going was able to be removed, and impacted my symptoms. Some of them went away, leaving a better picture, a better, clearer, sharper totality of characteristic symptoms of the true chronic disease.
And you need less homeopathic intervention, I think.
Totally. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
So we're talking 2 things. We started off simply with coffee.
Well, because I was thinking about a couple. So what has this in my mind is there are a whole bunch of things going on. We're getting ready for our team retreat, and which starts on Tuesday.
Yep.
Our folks start coming in, and then we've got graduation, and then we have the retreat. The what is it called? The Potentized Homeopath. I love that.
Yep.
And then our gala. And one of the things in putting together the menu, and I met with the caterer this week who's helping me with some of the events, because I can't cook and teach at the same time. I mean, I could, but somebody'd have to run the PowerPoint. No, I could not. It would be funny though. Anyway, but I was thinking about all the ways in which we're approaching making food. We only want things that are seasonal, and there are lots of people who have dietary restrictions, and there are ways in which, when you approach your life from this healthy perspective, then you feel better. It's difficult when people are traveling. Like, taking good care of people when they travel is really important, because you're off your center to begin with. Like, when we travel to New Zealand, first thing I do is I go to get a green juice. Right? I have my little routine for the ways that I try to keep my body going after a really long travel. But it's an interesting thing, because it does become confusing, because, like, for example, they're all, I teach that class on eating disorders, right? And so eating disorders, it's funny. I see sometimes there's like a webinar, heal the eating disorder in 4 easy steps, or here are some remedies to help with. It's like, oh my gosh, it's one of the most complex expressions of Sora, when the mind is overriding the body's survival instinct. That is a big deal. And it happens in all different ways. It's not just anorexia and bulimia. It's, orthorexia, the disease of eating clean, right? There is orthorexia, ARFID, avoidant and restricted food intake disorder, which you see with kids with pandas, right? Or sensory integration issues. And so there are so many complexities to this, right? It's not just, the mind rubric, refuses to eat. It's like, there's so much to it. Sometimes someone feels like they're going to be poisoned, or that can be a big part of it. Somebody might also avoid something because they're afraid that they might have to go to the bathroom in a public place. I remember a case, students who might be listening might remember, there's a case, a Nature Muriaticum case that I teach. And this woman, that when she made her appointment, my office used to be in the Wall Street area in New York City, downtown, and she lived on the Upper East Side. And to get to me was, long subway ride, and she had to manage her digestive issues. And it was such a complexity that it had to be between certain hours that she knew she wouldn't have to use a toilet, right? She was an older person. She managed her life traveling around the city based on whatever. So she would avoid certain foods 2 days before she would have an appointment, and she would only, so there's so much that we have to understand, and there's no superficiality to the deeper understanding of all the things, right? You're just staring at me like I've really...
I'm just thinking about what you're saying. I mean, you think about that list that Hahnemann gives us, right? Things to remove from the lifestyle when you're in the treatment of chronic disease.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Now,
I've got that list.
That is a list that is impossible. Well,
shall I?
Well,
footnote to 260?
No, because I want to try and get out what's in my head, and that is that you could do it for a day, or you could do it for 2 days. You'd probably do it for a week. But that is a very difficult lifestyle. It's a very bland
Patients
life.
with chronic diseases should avoid the following: coffee, fine Chinese tea and other herb teas, beers adulterated with medicinal vegetable substances not suitable for the state of the patient, so-called fine liqueurs prepared with medicinal spices, all kinds of punch.
Are you going to read the whole thing?
Spiced chocolate, many kinds of colognes and perfumes, strongly scented flowers in the room, medicinally compounded tooth powders, and tooth spirits, which is where the toothpaste thing comes in.
Strongly scented flowers in the room.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
But it's interesting that coffee and toothpaste are the things that have stuck. It's totally bizarre. Like, where did that come from? And why?
I did
herb
a bit
teas.
of a dive. I did a dive into that.
Did you?
Yeah. At one point, early, would have, again, 10, 15 years ago, just trawling homeopaths' websites around the world, seeing what they advised in terms of regimen, and coffee and toothpaste were always there.
Always. I remember
it's a total misreading of the aphorism.
Well, because and then people switched to herb tea. Also a problem.
Well, according to this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. According to this.
Keep going.
Medicinally compounded tooth powders and tooth spirits, perfumed sachets, highly seasoned foods and sauces, spiced cakes and frozen goods, ices and ice creams, prepared with medicinal matters, e.g. coffee, vanilla, etc., raw medicinal herbs on soups, vegetable dishes with herbs, roots, or sprouting stalks, such as asparagus with long green tips, hops, sprouts, and all vegetables possessing medicinal powers, celery, parsley, sorrel, tarragon, all kinds of onions, etc., old cheeses and meats which are putrid. I'm down with that. I'm going to say I don't want any putrid food, so I found one.
Do you mean when you're getting treatment, or in terms of...
In general, I don't want putrid food.
That just means pate.
No, that putrid. It's not putrid. Pate is not putrid.
Well, no, it's not.
Foods which have medicinal side effects, e.g. the meat and fat of pigs, ducks, and geese, all too young veal, sour foods, all kinds of salads. It's not giving me all the rest of it. Wait, where's the rest?
So, folks, as Denise...
Oh, wait, because I like... Here, this is...
Oh, she's about to get to the swingers.
Yeah. It's, all of these are to be removed from chronically ill patients who should also avoid every excess, even that of sugar and salt, alcoholic drinks not diluted with water, heated rooms, woolen clothing next to the skin. There goes our Ibex investments in the icebreaker.
In the treatment of chronic disease.
A sedentary lifestyle in closed quarters or more often only passive movement through riding, driving, and swinging, excessive breastfeeding, long afternoon naps lying down in bed, reading in a horizontal position, keeping late hours, uncleanliness, unnatural voluptuousness, enervation from reading lubricious material, that's porn, onanism, you'll figure that out for yourself if it follows the porn. Incomplete coition or abstinence from coition, either from superstition or to prevent the engenderment of children. In marriage, objects of anger, grief, or vexation, passionate play, mental or bodily overexertion, especially immediately after a meal. That's why the old ladies say you can't. Old Italian ladies used to tell us we couldn't go swimming for 30 minutes after lunch.
My mother used to say that as well.
Not just the Italian ladies.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Dwelling in marshy regions and stuffy rooms, penury, etc. All these things must be avoided as much as possible or removed if the cure is not to be hindered or even made impossible. Some of my imitators, this is my favorite part, by forbidding far more, rather indifferent things seem to make the diet of the patient unnecessarily difficult, which is not to be sanctioned.
Yeah, hang on.
Yeah.
He is super clear. If you want to get better,
Yep.
if you're sick chronically and you want to get better, do this.
Yep.
Remove these medicinal things. And for one reason.
Yep.
So that the homeopath can see what's going on.
That's exactly it.
All right. Now, I think, and of course, what many folks don't know, for some reason they don't know, and I didn't know for years and years and years, is that that aphorism was expanded upon by Berningshausen when he wrote
the homeopathic
diet for the lay public.
Yep.
And that goes into real depth.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the things that, and he's cool because he breaks it down into, foods that are forbidden, foods that are fine.
Yeah.
Then toiletry articles that are fine and forbidden.
And I didn't read all this because I don't remember reading the veal.
Yeah, you did.
The all too young veal. Did I say that?
No, you didn't say veal, but you did mention
the putrid meats. But there's the all too. How did I not? Did I miss it? The all.
Well, Connie, you're going quick.
Sorry, no, but there's. It's because it's switched over here. Foods which have medicinal. E.g. the meat and fat of pigs, ducks, and geese.
Yeah.
That's the pate. All too young veal, sour foods, all kinds of salads.
No veal parm.
There goes your veal parm. But if you're okay, I want to take this in a different direction because I think are we all super clear? And you and I in agreement that suggested list, which he says could be even more restrictive. Right.
Is for when you're in the treatment of your chronic disease.
And which most people that come to us are.
Right. But would you be saying that let's project that Hahnemann's in the house or that you're in the treatment?
Wouldn't that be amazing?
Well, hang on.
Okay.
Because when you read what Hahnemann wrote to his clients in Treuhertz's book,
yeah.
I mean, he is vitriolic when people break the code.
Totally.
It's like, you, sir, are a bounder and a scoundrel.
Mm-hmm.
and a bad person, and now you owe me
$50,
10 shallers or whatever it might be.
Right.
So he really stuck to it. But do you think that this is a lifestyle?
I mean, of all,
because I don't think that's a lifestyle. I don't think he ever meant it in that way.
No, he's talking about in order to cure. If you're engaged in the treatment of chronic disease. Right.
So if we're in agreement about that, then what is?
Well, he's saying not even in the treatment with chronic diseases, which at this point we all would have. Show me the non-sort
Well, we all have
person.
chronic diseases for sure, but I'm not in the treatment at the moment.
So is it?
He doesn't. A dose of Nux vomica the other day.
He did. Yeah, you did. And you know what? And we're all the better for it. A cheeky little Nux vomica makes Al a good boy. Thank you. But it's really interesting because, see, I don't. Gosh.
And that's where I think when I look at the world of nutritional diets and plans.
Well, this is where it all becomes kind of challenging.
And the crazy, ways in which marketing has got involved with exertion and exercise in our lifetime. If I think about the new diets that hit and that, folks did to assist them with their problems.
Look, to me, I always like when the vegans and the paleos go at it. That's the fight for the ages.
Oh, right.
Right? I mean, and that is, I went to school for for allergy safe and health supportive cuisine. Mm-hmm. And I did that. That was in 2010. It was a full chef's program with an internship and an externship and all this business. And I did it because so many of my clients at that point were so sick and it was the beginning of when I started to see a lot of autism in my practice. In people that, they had kids who were diagnosed on the spectrum and they had no idea what to do. Mm. And it was the beginning of, and I know it occurred before that, but this is in my practice when it really became a thing. And there was so much confusion. And at this point, we would see that if you, put a kid on a gluten-free, casein-free diet, you'd get movement in their well-being really quickly. It doesn't work that way now. I don't see it in the same way.
Yeah.
Because of the full bucket business. But
Yeah.
and that's one of the things, like that is, so all these courses that I've been working on developing, and in this book that I'm working on around autoimmunity and homeopathy is really trying to sort of fit these things together, because there isn't one answer. It's not like, okay, if I avoid the asparagus and the parsley. I mean, we broke almost every one of those rules just yesterday. How, and
I'm not wearing woolen clothing next to the skin.
on your arms you are, because what t-shirt do you have underneath that woolen sweater, jumper, or jersey?
You're on a strictly needs-to-know basis.
It's fine. I'm not even going to talk about it. But if look down at look, what's that on there?
There's all the hair that's come off my face.
I can't. Anyway, but
happen?
if we are...
I'll take some sulfur.
If we are really trying to help people to deal with these deep issues,
Yeah.
how much guidance are we able to provide? How much is appropriate? How much, when students come through our program, a lot of people arrive with ancillary, modality experience, and it's hard sometimes to not look at it through that lens. How many people, who come in say, well, the reason is because they have the MTFHR, FHR, always get it backwards, but, mutation. But at the end of the day,
As if that's the answer.
Right. It's just, it's because all of the reductionistic things that we've since learned don't really help us to solve the case homeopathically. And so it requires us to sort of have this different perspective. And I find that when we focus on building health, what are all the things that you sort of know are helpful, right? What are the ways, because I know this is the last week of the school year, and it's the school year ends, and for whatever craziness possessed us, we're going right into the busiest 2 weeks of the year. But I feel like a fighter in training, making sure that I stay in bed long enough, don't get up too early, because if I have to teach, like tonight in Australia from 7 to 9 p.m. my time, I'd be cooked if I didn't, make sure I got enough rest, making sure I stay hydrated. Those are all just things that we do to keep our bodies, to keep us going. But I think sometimes when we focus on that, and then you sort of recognize what are the things that really don't feel good, and I look at I think it's called the Walls diet. It's a woman who had MS who, she quote unquote cured herself with this diet. And it's really interesting because I have a bunch of clients who have done similar things that have not been, quote unquote cured based on a diet. But sometimes when people are, they don't have deep levels of disease, then, look at, when I teach on autoimmunity and neurodegenerative diseases, I use the Vitulcus thing. He breaks it down into the different levels of disease, right? Yeah. And if a person is at a level 1 or whatever, it's easy for the homeopath. It's easy for the patient. They remove a couple of things. You give them a good remedy, and you can move them along a trajectory toward health.
Got it.
But you get people who are, if we look at now like pans and pandas as the canaries in the coal mine, right? Then what we're looking at is truly developed psoriatic disease. And then you're looking at a compounded problem, because you have the part of the nature of the disease is that these people are non-compliant. These, kids and young adults who are coming to see us, they, I mentioned ARFID earlier, avoidant and restricted food intake disorder. That is a component of these diseases for whatever reason. Or you see a kid with sensory issues. Well, you cannot, there's only so much you can do. There are only so many, black bean quinoa burgers that you can give to if you've got somebody who's really, really struggling. And so
Gee, that's so important, because, I haven't told you this story. I'm getting more and more Jewish folks coming into my practice.
Yeah.
And this guy, very orthodox, turned up 2 weeks ago.
But I think you need to be clear. This is not. This is just that there are communities of Orthodox Jewish people, and then you you wind up with a whole bunch of them, not just like, oh, and now I have, Chinese people in my practice or whatever, but it's a particular community that you're serving.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, because people write in and they have things to say, and I want to make sure that we are.
Yeah, well, the point that I'm making is that this guy, he's mid-40s, bunch of problems, super healthy, level, in what you just said, a level 1.
Yeah.
2 doses of whatever it was. And he wrote to me and said, I was feeling better after the first dose. My symptom had gone away.
Yeah.
Like, it was a pretty wicked chronic symptom with a whole bunch of insomnia that went along with it. And he did 1 tweak of his regimen, and I put him on a daily...
Right. 50 millesimal.
50 millesimal. Done.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just so interesting because I think you are kind of leading with, your stories about your practice at the moment. They're all really super complex clients.
Yeah.
Like really sick folks. But
see, because, I worked in an Orthodox Jewish community for years, and there were so many people who were so healthy.
Yeah.
And they lived this beautiful lifestyle, and this adherence to their cultural paradigm was also healthful.
Yeah.
I mean, not for everybody, like in any, in any community, but you saw people who hit a different level of health. I love that. But now, the cases, like right now, I'm limiting how many of these really complex cases because
is that something that we should really be discussing and analysing as part of our evaluation, as part of our clinical decision making? Like,
oh my
really?
Gosh!
But I'm thinking more formal. Something a bit more formal, like where, and of course, models are just models, but like this person. I suppose, in a way, it is part of our chronic case template, isn't it? But we are thinking about, is this person healthy? Is this an indisposition? Is the removal of, the insertion of 3 smoothies and the removal of pizza going to solve this person's chronic disease? Right. Okay. If that would, then that's a healthy person. Right. But having some clarity on that, other than, in my own classification, it would be train wreck. Yeah. And slight indisposition. Right. And a whole spectrum in the middle.
But you know what? So there's one other level in there, which is, and I hate to say this, but if they've taken too many homeopathic remedies, those cases are exponentially harder to treat. Yeah. These are the cases that I'm struggling with right now. They've had, not 5 remedies, but 50 or 150.
But that's really about an unclear symptom picture, isn't it?
No, it's a weird response or no response.
Yeah. Okay.
The vital force is absolutely confused after being barraged. How would you say barraged?
Barrage.
Barrage.
Yeah, there was a barrage. Oh no, I'd say barrage.
Barrage.
Yeah, the guns went off. There was a barrage. Yeah. Barrage.
But I think we need, this is the thing. Like, I'm teaching Pans and Pandas to the Australian community tonight. By the time this podcast airs, it will have been taught. But some of those folks last week said that they listened to our podcast, which was really super nice.
In Australia?
Yeah. And no.
Hello, Australia.
Yeah, hello, Australia. And the thing is that one of the things that I'm going to be talking with them about tonight is just this way in which these cases... Oh, actually, no, I know what I was going to say. 2 interesting things as I was going through all of my statistics and all the papers and publications that all the research I did to put this together. I've taught it in Europe, in the UK, and I've taught it in America, and now, in Australia, and I'm always comparing the statistics. And one of the things...
you're using local statistics when you're talking about autoimmunity.
Look, exactly. Yeah. And so it's interesting. America and Australia, really, really similar.
I would agree.
But last week when I was teaching about just the intro to autoimmunity and sort of giving, laying down all the groundwork, I had a statistic of, I can't remember the name of the organization, like the Allergy Institute or whatever they are. They called Australia the allergy capital of the world. And tonight I'm going to teach an alpha-gal case and mast cell activation and pandas. Those are three of the cases. Those are the three cases in this presentation. I think they're the only three. And it's interesting because alpha-gal originated in Australia, didn't it?
I saw my first case. You're talking about tick-borne allergy to meat response.
Yes.
So I remember there's I was going to say the place where this person lived, so I can't say that. But a client of mine turned up, and she said the strangest thing. She said, I got bitten by a tick, and I'm just going, okay.
Yeah.
And she said, ever since then, allergic to meat. Now, that was, I'm going to say 2006. So early. Mm-hmm. I think that's early.
And I don't know if others were seeing it here, but it was not documented until later here.
Right.
But it's really interesting.
Well, I don't think it was documented there. I think she would have been like an outlier.
Okay.
And of course, I wasn't really looking in literature at that sort of point. I was just dealing with clinically what was in front of me.
Well, and it would be like, well, anyway. But what's so interesting to me is that in Australia, as I was looking at all, like the equivalent of the CDC, the Center for Disease Control here, and the different organizations that put out the statistics on health and different conditions. In the Australian realm, they combine allergies and autoimmunity together, which I've not seen in my, checking around in other countries. And I think it's genius because to me, it's all the same. What we're seeing now is it's like the same thing that happened to me with the gluten and the antibiotics, right? It was my biome completely destroyed after, a venom and then the antibiotics.
Right.
And this is the same thing that we're seeing, like different, and the part about the tick is not necessary because we now see these responses without a known vector. Anyway, I find that this is I think the topic that we need to be really focusing on because these cases are challenging. They're asking us to really dive into all the different aspects of homeopathy. And if we try to treat them superficially, then they're much harder to get to to solve. To be discussed. I think we have to wrap this up. You know why?
Why?
We have to load my kiln. I need your help. For our gala, I have been asked to make, because, I had plenty of time in the past couple of weeks, but this is my fun and happy place. So I have hand-thrown a bunch of vases. So all the tables will, hopefully, if everything works out in my kiln, we'll have a hand-thrown vase with local flowers. And
nice.
A few things for our silent auction. And if you're listening to this before the 5th of June, jump on to the Give Butter site. We'll have to put something in the show notes to get you there, but there's a silent auction and amazing donations. Pharmacies have donated kits. The Dynamis folks, Jeremy Scherer, Camilla Scherer, have donated some pretty amazing gifts to the silent auction. Packages. Books, 50% off a Dynamis, Camilla's new book on agro-homeopathy, all kinds of amazing stuff. I can't even remember all the things.
Plus, one of the original Boriki and Tuffle copper printing plates.
Thank you, Karen Allen.
From Karen Allen.
That is
just a chicken dinner. It's fantastic.
I think that is that's the big item, I think, in our that'll be in the live auction.
Right. Yeah, because I don't even know where to begin.
Because it's priceless.
Right.
It is priceless.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it really is.
gosh. And now I was going to talk about the milk that I put in my coffee. Homemade cashew and hemp milk that froths beautifully. I have a little machine called the Nutter, N-U-T-R. I think they were on Shark Tank. I've never watched Shark Tank. Have you?
No idea what you're talking about.
Shark Tank is like a thing where people have a new product they want to bring to market, and there's like some dude that gives them money. If like, I don't know, I think it's sort of like a reality TV show sort of thing.
Either way,
but the nutter people,
since you've been using that product and doing the milk, you've grown 3 inches.
at least.
Yeah.
I had, because when I first started in the culinary world, which is a really long time ago, it's always been adjacent to my homeopathy journey. But I used to make non-dairy milks by putting whatever I was making it from in my Vitamix blender, and then straining it using like pantyhose or tights. And I had rigged up this thing in my kitchen where I had a pole over the sink, and then I would have a trough, and I would have I would fill the pantyhose to strain the debris, the fine particulate matter. And now I have 2 machines.
Wait.
We should have an almond cow and a nutter.
No, I'm not happy about this.
What?
Because you've given me a lot of grief about when I am in a hotel room.
No, we're not going there. No,
wash my
you
socks.
can't. No, we are not going there. It's not.
Why not? You've just told me you're hanging pantyhose in the kitchen.
My own house, and it's for making food. They weren't worn. They weren't dirty. Anyway, that's a story for another day. No, yours. There's enough today with your blousoon shirts and everything. That's all right. Hey, maybe I'm going to tease this because maybe it will happen, because we have our team here and we've got our friends here. I think we could do a series of podcasts with different folks from Home Foundation, Institute for the Advancement of Homeopathy. We're going to have Carly here. We could talk about NAHI, the North American Homeopathy Examiners.
No brainer.
Carly arrives on Tuesday. She's here for 10 days. I think we're going to have, and we've got some of our amazing friends that will be here for the events. It's going to be a festival. High five. All right. Thanks, people. Good to spend this time with you.
We're out of here.
We're out of here.
I'm heading to the kiln.
Yes. We're going to load Philalethes. That's the name of my kiln. If you know, you know.
The Academy of Homeopathy Education provides various pathways through our program depending on your desired outcome. Our acute care homeopathy programs cater to students and medical professionals who aspire to use homeopathy in an acute care setting. We also offer introductory, professional, clinical training, and postgraduate programs. You can learn more at ahe.online.